The first shot wasn't loud. It was distant, swallowed by rain, filtered through pine. But every man in the valley heard it. Then came silence, the kind that makes you forget to breathe. The kind that makes you realize something's gone wrong before anyone says it out loud. They were moving single file through the timberline, 6 men in full gear, SEAL Team Echo 4, running a reconnaissance patrol 40 miles north of the border. They'd been sent to verify satellite chatter, a suspected weapons drop along the ridge system outside State Forest. Routine, low threat, just another sweep. Until the forest answered back. The rain had started before dawn, a thin, cold drizzle that turned the ground slick and the air electric. The point man, Petty Officer Hale, raised a fist and dropped to a knee. Motion. 9 o'clock between the trunks. A flash of something, not movement exactly. Presence. Then came the second shot. This one hit wood, splintered bark, close enough for everyone to taste it. Contact left, Hale shouted, but the echo was lost under another round, closer this time. They scattered, searching for origin, angles, rhythm. Nothing. The shots were irregular, controlled. No visible muzzle flash. Whoever was firing knew how to disappear between sound and terrain. Within seconds, the team had taken cover. A rotted log, a fallen pine, a shallow dip in the earth barely deep enough to hide their shadows. Lieutenant, the team leader, keyed his mic. Command Echo 4, we are under fire. Unknown number of shooters. Grid Sierra 95. Static, no response. The ridge blocked their signal. He tried again, nothing. He looked at Hale. Hale shook his head, comms were dead. Another round snapped through the air. This one hit Sergeant Vega's pack and tore through a ration pouch. The hiss of punctured plastic, the smell of powder, no blood, not yet. Return fire, barked. 3 rifles answered, controlled bursts, suppression, not aggression, no clear target, just noise to claim some space in the chaos. Then nothing, silence again. Only the rain. Only the steady rhythm of it dripping through the canopy, tapping against metal and skin. Scanned the tree line. His heartbeat sounded like thunder in his ears. He'd led dozens of missions, desert, city, coastline, but this felt different. The terrain was wrong, too quiet, too patient. He motioned to Hale, "You see anything?" Hale's reply was barely a whisper. "No, but whoever they are, they're good." Another crack, this time from behind. The round passed within inches of his helmet and buried itself in the mud beside him. He spun, dropped, and felt the weight of realization settle in his gut. They were being bracketed. Whoever was out there wasn't shooting to kill. Not yet. They were corralling them. Then came the voice over the radio. Female comm controlled. "You're in my line." Froze, the others stared. None of them recognized the voice. It wasn't command. It wasn't anyone they knew. Hale frowned. "Say again, identify yourself." "Nothing." The voice came once more, softer this time. "Move 10 meters east, stay low." Hesitated. This was insane. You don't take orders from ghosts in the woods. But before he could respond, another shot rang out from the opposite direction. This one dropped one of the shooters. They heard it, the distinct crack then thud of a man hitting the forest floor. Then another. 2 rounds, 2 impacts. Precise, lethal. Silence again. The team exchanged looks, disbelief, confusion, adrenaline mixing with relief. Keyed his mic. "Who the hell is this?" No answer. Only static. Somewhere up the ridge, through the mist and the endless pine, a woman adjusted the scope of her suppressed rifle. Wind 12 knots west to east. Elevation correction 0.3 mils. Range 740 meters. She exhaled. Reeves had been awake for 36 hours. When the call came through encrypted channels at 200, she'd already been monitoring the grid. A private contract job. Overwatch for a recon team moving through suspected militia territory. She wasn't told who they were, just that they were friendly assets. She didn't ask. Now she was lying prone in a bed of wet needles, suit soaked, heartbeat steady. Her father used to tell her that silence wasn't the absence of sound, it was the discipline to stay part of it. That's what she was doing now, becoming part of the forest. Her spotting scope caught faint heat signatures through the mist, 6 friendly outlines. 2 hostile, 1 down, 1 repositioning. She adjusted slightly, feeling the rifle settle against her shoulder like an extension of bone and breath. Wind shifted, she waited. The shot needed to be perfect. She thought of the training, the endless hours, the math, the breathing control, the patience that never ended. She thought of the looks she'd gotten in sniper school, the smirks, the dismissals, the disbelief. Too small, too soft. But none of them had ever seen what patience could do when it was weaponized. The second hostile moved into view. Exhale, pause. Trigger break. Impact. Through the scope, she saw the body drop behind a tree trunk. No movement, confirmed. She didn't smile, didn't speak. She just whispered, "Echo 4, you're clear." This time heard it clean. "Identify." "Not your concern," she said. "You've got 4 minutes before they reposition. Head south, creek bed, stay in the low ground." Looked at Hale. Hale shrugged. "She just saved our ass, sir. Or she's leading us into something worse." "Yeah, but standing here isn't an option either." Nodded. "All right, move." They broke from cover, low and fast, moving through the slick undergrowth. Rain fell harder now, thick sheets cutting visibility to almost nothing. The sound of it masked their footsteps and whatever else was moving through the forest behind them. Watched them through her scope, tracking movement. They were disciplined, fluid, coordinated, but they didn't know this ground. The ridge system here was a maze of blind gullies and deadfall, easy to disappear, easier to die. She shifted positions, crawling uphill to maintain overwatch. The rifle was an old M2010 ESR, bolt action, suppressed, modified for mountain ops. The paint was scratched. The barrel, but it was loyal, reliable. She moved like a ghost between trees, careful not to disturb the wet earth. Every step mattered. Every sound carried. At 300 meters she paused, heard voices. 2 men, foreign accents, quiet, searching. They were militia, local contract killers, trained just enough to be dangerous. Slowed her breathing, tilted her rifle, and sighted in on the lead man's shoulder. He was scanning with NVGs, too high an angle, rookie mistake. She took the shot. Clean, silent. The second man froze, she didn't. 2 heartbeats later, he was gone too. She checked her watch, time was slipping. Echo 4 was still moving south, but too slow. They didn't understand, this wasn't just an ambush, it was bait. A draw-in contain op. The militia wasn't hunting, they were herding, driving them toward the valley floor where the fog would close in and the escape route would vanish under whiteout. Activated her mic. "Echo 4, change course, bearing 240, do it now." His voice came through rough. "You again, who the hell are you?" "Someone who knows what's coming." "Why are you even on this frequency?" "I was hired to make sure you don't die." "By who?" "Silence." "Cursed, copy, 240. They adjusted formation, cutting west. The terrain dipped into a narrow ravine, thick pine overhead, darkness deepened. Hale glanced over his shoulder. "Sir, she's tracking us somehow." "Good," said, "let her." He didn't know why, but something in her voice carried weight. Calm authority. The kind you don't fake. He'd heard that tone before in people who'd seen things and stopped needing to talk about them. They pressed on, reaching the creek bed. Water ran cold and fast over stone, raised a hand to halt. "We hold here." The rain softened, the wind died. For a moment there was peace, fragile, temporary, impossible. Then Hale whispered, "Sir, thermal signature North Ridge." Lifted his scope, saw 3 heat signatures cresting the slope, silhouettes against the gray. "Positions," he ordered. Before anyone could move, a single suppressed shot cracked through the air, not from the ridge, from somewhere closer. One hostile dropped. 2 more dove for cover. Then another round, another body fell. Silence returned. His voice followed, "You're welcome." Exhaled, half laugh, half disbelief. "Who are you, sniper?" A pause. "Someone who doesn't miss," she said. And then static. She was gone. The team regrouped, breath heavy, nerves raw. Hale leaned against a tree, shaking rain off his helmet. "You ever seen shooting like that?" Didn't answer. He was staring at the ridge, mind running fast. Whoever she wasn't just another operator. She knew their grid, their comms, their terrain. Which meant she'd been here before. And maybe she had her own reasons for being back. Above them, unseen through the fog, moved deeper into the forest. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. She knew what was coming. The rain was only the beginning. And in the dark heart of that valley, something waited that none of them were ready for. Something she'd buried years ago. But the past has a way of finding you, especially when it still owes you blood. They waited in the rain until the thunder rolled far enough away that they could hear their own breathing again. No one spoke for a long time. The forest held its breath. Steam rose from wet earth and cooling rifles. Somewhere downstream, water hissed over rock like a whisper too soft to understand. Crouched beside the creek and watched the current pull twigs and pine needles south. Every instinct told him to move, but the team needed a plan, direction, certainty, anything that looked like control. Hale was kneeling near the bank, scanning the ridge through night optics. "Nothing on thermal, sir." She cleared them all. "Or they fell back to reposition," said. Vega exhaled through his teeth. "With that kind of accuracy, if she wanted us dead, we'd be dead." Didn't answer. His comm crackled, half a syllable lost to static, then silence again. They were still blind to command. The storm had eaten the signal whole. He looked at the faces around him, mud-streaked, exhausted, waiting for his call. "We keep moving west until we find elevation. Maybe get line of sight for transmission. Hale on point. Vega, cover our 6. They started up the ravine. The ground was slick with runoff. Every step sucked at their boots. Rain had thinned to mist, but the cold bit deeper now, settling into joints and lungs. His mind kept circling the same question. Who the hell was she? He'd heard female snipers before, Ukraine, Syria, the Joint Special Operations Pool, but this voice, that control under fire, it was different. Detached, like she wasn't rescuing them so much as maintaining balance, a quiet sense of duty that didn't belong to anyone's chain of command. He remembered the way she'd said it, "You're in my line." Not "I'll cover you," not "hold position." My line. As if this ground, this forest, belonged to her. They climbed another 100 meters before Hale halted and raised a fist. Movement ahead. Everyone froze. Signaled down, Vega shifted to flank. A shadow broke from the trees, slow, deliberate. "Hold fire," whispered. A figure emerged through the mist, hooded, rifle slung low. She stopped 20 paces away, half hidden by the gray. No insignia, no lights, just eyes steady, unblinking, assessing them the way a surgeon studies a wound before deciding where to cut. "Don't point those at me," she said quietly. Raised his weapon anyway. "Identify yourself." "You wouldn't believe me if I did." "Try me." She stepped closer. Rain ran off the brim of her hood, tracing the edges of a face that looked too calm for this place. "Name, Reeves," she said. "Private contractor. Long-range overwatch for an intel operation that was supposed to end 3 hours ago." Frowned. "Never heard of you." "You weren't supposed to." Hale muttered, "She's kidding. No record, no comms, shows up mid-firefight, come on. Glanced at him. You're still alive because I showed up mid-firefight. Vega gave a low whistle. She's got a point. Lowered his rifle slightly. You said intel operation, whose? She shook her head. Doesn't matter. The people who hired me are gone. The ones who stayed are hunting you now. How do you know that? Because I used to be one of them. The words hung there like smoke, too heavy to move, too real to ignore. Studied her. You're saying you worked with the militia. Before it was a militia, she said. Before it turned into whatever this is. She looked past them, scanning They're not a random cell. They're ex-military, rogue assets who didn't go home when the contracts ended. They built something out here, something they don't want found. And we just walked into it, Hale said. Exactly. Holstered his weapon but didn't relax. You could be feeding us a story. Then you should shoot me and see how far you get without me, replied, voice even. Your comms are fried. You're 3 clicks from extraction, and they'll circle before sunrise. Vega's gaze darted between them. Sir, I vote we let the mysterious sniper guide us out of this hellhole. Hesitated. Every manual he'd ever read screamed not to trust unknown assets, but manuals didn't bleed, people did. He nodded once. Fine, you lead, but you answer questions as we move. Didn't nod, didn't smile, just turned and started uphill. The forest swallowed them again. The climb was brutal. Wet shale, shifting mud, no moonlight. Every step demanded balance and faith. Hale slipped twice. Vega caught him once. The others grumbled but kept pace. Moved like she'd been born on this terrain. Low center of gravity, fluid rhythm, not wasting breath. Watched her from behind. She carried a rifle that looked older than any current issue. Custom scope, no serials. Homemade suppressor. Every detail screamed experience and independence. Marine Corps, he asked. She didn't turn, once. Scout sniper. Something like that. Why leave? She slowed, glanced over her shoulder. Because sometimes the uniform becomes louder than the reason you wore it. Let that sit. He'd seen plenty of soldiers break under the quiet weight of service, when you realize you're no longer fighting enemies, just the noise in your own head. The team reached a narrow plateau, a flat ledge overlooking the valley they'd escaped. Rain clouds pressed low, silver veins of lightning flickering far to the east. From here they could see faint movement below, figures with flashlights sweeping through the undergrowth. A dozen, maybe more. They're tracking heat, said. You can't stay exposed. Hale peered through binoculars. How long until they reach this ridge? 20 minutes if they stay coordinated. Can we outpace them? No, but we can outthink them. She crouched, pulled a small tablet from her pack. The screen glowed dimly, displaying a topographic map of the region. She traced a finger across it. There's an old logging road 2 clicks west, flooded out years ago, but it'll buy us cover. Leaned over her shoulder. That road leads toward the extraction LZ. Exactly. Problem is, Hale said, they'll expect us to take it. Looked up, they'll expect you, not me. Something cold flickered behind her eyes. She adjusted the rifle sling, checked her chamber. You go south along the creek, stay low, no light, I'll draw them west. Shook his head. No deal, you go alone, you die alone. She smiled faintly. That's the point. Vega stepped forward. You can't just. She cut him off. This isn't charity. I know their formation, their signals, how they flank. If they chase me, you make extraction. If they don't, we all die here. Simple math. Studied her face, the calm resolve, the absence of fear. Not bravado, acceptance. What's in it for you? He asked. Looked out over the valley. Redemption, maybe, or just the chance to finish what I started. She stood, slung the rifle, and turned toward the western slope. Called after her, you don't even know us. She paused, I don't have to. Then she disappeared into the trees. The forest closed around her like a confession. Every branch creaked with wind, every echo threatened memory. Moved fast, deliberate. She could feel them closing in, the footfalls of men who used to be brothers in arms. She trained some of them once, taught them wind drift, shot placement, how to disappear. Now she would teach them consequence. She reached a ridge of black rock overlooking the western basin. From here, sound carried for miles. Perfect. She laid prone, unfolded the bipod, and sighted through the scope. 6 figures, moving single file, tight discipline. She adjusted for wind. Trigger press. The lead man dropped. Another round, second fell. The others scattered. She tracked them one by one, methodical, merciless. Not hate, not rage, just precision. Through the rain, she caught glimpses of their faces. Mud, fear, confusion. Once, she might have called them teammates. But loyalty had an expiration date when greed took command. She felt the familiar ache rise behind her ribs, the quiet knowledge that every kill echoed back, that even the right shot left something missing inside you. Her father's voice drifted through the rain. Silence isn't peace. It's just the place where you decide who you are. She chambered another round. A figure broke cover, sprinting downhill. She led the target, half-breath, squeeze missed by an inch. He dove behind a fallen log and fired blind in her direction. Bark exploded beside her face. Shifted left, counted to 3, rose and fired again. Impact, stillness. She exhaled slowly, feeling her heartbeat slow to match the rain. Far below, and the team moved through the creek bed. The sound of distant gunfire echoed through the canyon, sharp, precise, fatting east to west. "She's buying us time," Hale said quietly. Vega looked up at the dark sky. "She's buying us more than that." Kept his focus forward. He didn't let the thought form, but it lingered anyway. How someone could fight with that kind of calm only if they'd already accepted the outcome. He keyed his mic. "Sniper status." "Static." No reply. "Sniper, do you copy?" "Nothing. Only the rain." He clenched his jaw and pushed on. They moved for another hour, the forest thickening, fog rising from the creek like breath from the earth itself. Every shadow looked like a trap, every sound a ghost. When they finally reached the flooded road, dawn was bleeding gray across the horizon. Looked back once, toward the where she'd gone. He didn't see movement, no signal, no proof. Just mist rolling over the trees like a closing curtain. Up on the ridge, lay motionless. Her shoulder ached where the last exchange had grazed her. The air smelled of wet iron and pine sap. The hillside below was silent. No movement now, no pursuit. She closed her eyes and listened to the rain. It sounded almost like applause. Not for victory, for survival. She touched the worn brass tag hanging inside her collar, an old Marine ID she never turned in. The numbers were fatting, the edges dented from years of being shoved into pockets and packs. "You were right, Mom," she whispered. "People learn by watching." She pushed herself up, pain cutting through her side. She'd have to move soon. The team would reach the LZ within 2 hours, maybe less. She checked her rifle, replaced the mag, and began crawling toward the next ridge. There was still one more name left out there. And if he was leading this militia now, then tonight's ambush was only the beginning. She would find him. Not for revenge. For closure. But the forest wasn't done with her yet. As she disappeared into the mist, another set of footsteps followed, slow, careful, deliberate. Someone who knew her rhythm. Someone who'd been waiting for her to come back. And far below, Scom finally crackled to life. A new voice, command frequency. Echo 4, this is operations. We've lost satellite eyes. You're in restricted territory. Confirm status. Hesitated, eyes on the ridge. Status unknown, he said quietly, But we're not alone out here. They reached the clearing just as the storm broke apart. Rain faded into drizzle, then nothing. The silence after felt unnatural, like the forest itself had stopped to listen. Steam rose from the wet ground. Water dripped off the leaves, slow and rhythmic, like a clock counting down. Scan the open space ahead of them, a shallow meadow ringed by pines, the kind of terrain that begged to be a landing zone. Grass flattened by wind, burned edges where rotor wash had the earth before. This was it, the LZ. But there was no bird, no hum of rotors, no lights in the distance. Only emptiness. Hale checked his GPS, frowned. Coordinates match command's last transmission. Then where the hell are they? Vega muttered. Tried the comm again. Operations, this is Echo 4. We've reached designated extraction zone. Do you copy? Static answered. He tried again, voice harder. Operations respond. Do you read? Nothing. The team exchanged uneasy looks. Turned slowly, eyes tracing the tree line, then the above it. Something about the air felt wrong, too still. He lifted his scope. There, half a mile east, a glint between branches. Optics watching. Contact, he whispered. The team dropped to cover instantly, instincts overtaking exhaustion. Hale adjusted his sight. One spotter, maybe two, could be scouts. Range. 800 meters. Too far for small arms. Not for her, Vega said quietly. Hesitated, then keyed the mic. Sniper, this is Echo 4. If you're on this net, now would be a good time to say hello. A pause, then her voice calm as ever. You're late. Hale exhaled in relief. Jesus, she's alive. Scan the trees again. You see what I see. Two on overwatch, she said, but they're not militia. Then who are they? Yours. Frowned, say again. Check the insignia when they move. You'll understand. He did. The next time one of the observers shifted, a patch caught the light, a stylized trident, the mark of naval special warfare. His blood went cold. Friendly, Hale asked. Not unless they forgot to tell us we were expendable. Sir, Vega asked quietly. Didn't answer right away. His throat tightened around the truth. They're not here to extract us. They're here to clean the grid. The words hung heavy in the fog. Clean the grid, Hale repeated, disbelieving. You mean? I mean command knows about the militia outpost. They just didn't expect us to survive long enough to report it. Silence, the kind that changes people. Vega cursed under his breath. So this was never recon. Nodded once, we were the distraction. Hale kicked at the mud. They sent us in blind, then sent another unit to wipe the trail. 2 units, his voice cut in. One to erase you, one to finish what you started. Keyed his mic, where are you? Watching them from above, East Ridge. You've got 4 minutes before they move. You need to get below tree cover again. Not until we know what they're after. A pause. The wind whispered across the channel, soft and cold. They're not after you, she said. They're after me. 2 ridges east, lay belly down in the mud, scope centered on the clearing. Through the glass she saw the other team, 4 men in matte black, moving with surgical precision. No insignia beyond the trident, no visible rank. Ghosts. She knew the posture, the spacing, the silence. SEALs, but not hers, not anymore. The man leading them walked like he owned the earth beneath his feet, calm, centered, deliberate. His rifle stayed low, his head tilted slightly left when he listened, the way it always had. Her chest tightened. She didn't need the scope to know his name. Captain Mason Hale. Not the same Hale on's team. This was a different man entirely. The one who trained her at camp. The one who taught her to breathe through pain, to shoot through fear, to disappear when the world got loud. The one who'd vanished 3 years ago, after a classified op went dark. the one everyone assumed was dead. She had mourned him once. Now she could see the ghost walking. Her radio crackled, again. "Talk to me, Reeves, what's their play?" Her eyes stayed fixed on Hale's face. "They're here to recover a hard drive. Contains drone telemetry from the first strike this militia pulled off last month. And they can't risk it reaching the press. The footage shows U.S. tech in the wreckage." Swore softly. "So command's running cleanup on its own weapons." "Exactly. Then why you?" "Because I pulled the data first." "Jesus." "Yeah," she whispered. "I thought I could bury it. I was wrong." Back in the clearing gathered the team. His voice was low, urgent. "We're not extraction priority anymore. We're evidence." "Sir, we can't outrun command," Hale said. "No, but maybe we can outthink them." He pulled a map from his vest, drew a quick path with his knife. "If we cut north by northwest, we can hit the river by dawn. Dense cover, fast current. They won't risk air support that close to the border." Vega nodded. "What about her?" Hesitated. "She's the reason they're here. If she doesn't make it, none of this gets told." They started packing fast, stripping gear to essentials. Every click of a buckle sounded too loud. Keyed the mic again. "Reeves, they'll track your signal. Cut transmission after this. Meet us at the river bend north of Grid Delta. Copy." "Copy." Then quieter, almost to herself. "You're walking into something you can't win." His jaw tightened. "Story of my career." Watched the black-clad team descend into the valley. Her scope tracked Mason Hale's movements, but her mind slipped backward to a memory she couldn't stop replaying. The desert, the wind, the sound of his voice through a headset. "You're my best shot, Reeves, don't ever doubt that." Then the silence when the transmission cut off for good. She had carried that silence for years, built a life around it. And now he was here, walking through her scope again like nothing had ever burned down. She pulled the bolt back slowly, chambered around, and forced her breathing into rhythm. In, out, steady. Her finger touched the trigger, then froze. She couldn't, not yet. She needed to know why. The second team reached the meadow within minutes. They moved like ghosts through fog, rifles angled low, communication through hand signals. Efficient, clean. Mason Hale stopped at the old rotor scars, crouched, and pressed a gloved hand into the mud. "Still warm." "They were here," he said quietly. One of his men scanned the perimeter, tracks heading northwest. Mason nodded. "They'll head for water, intercept at the river." "And Reeves?" He looked toward the ridge, toward her. "She won't run," he said softly. "She never does." Watched him through glass and rain. He was right, she wasn't running. But she wasn't staying still either. She slid back from her position, careful not to disturb the wet soil. Every movement had to be deliberate, controlled. She needed a higher vantage, somewhere she could see both routes, the seals moving north, the hunters moving west. Her shoulder throbbed with pain. The graze wound from the earlier fight had reopened, seeping warmth into the cold. She tightened a makeshift bandage around it and kept moving. Halfway up the ridge, she stopped to catch her breath. The forest was darker here, older, heavier, the kind of place where sound went to die. She leaned against a tree and let herself feel it for a second, the fatigue, the ache, the weight of years. She thought of her mother, the ridge lines, the lessons carved into her bones before she ever wore a uniform. Patience will outlast pride. She whispered it out loud, just to hear something human again. Then she kept climbing. Below's team followed the creek until the roar of moving water grew into a wall of sound. The river, swift and black under the first pale hints of dawn. "This is it," said. Vega was already scanning both banks. "No bridge, sir." "We don't need one." "You want to swim that?" "Got a better idea." Before Vega could answer, gunfire echoed from somewhere upriver, 3 quick bursts. Controlled. Hale spun, scanning. That's not her rifle. Stomach sank. They're closing fast. Go now. The team splashed into the current, cold biting through gear and bone. The river pulled at them, relentless. Halfway across, turned back, saw movement on the ridge above. A silhouette. Rifle. And then the unmistakable sound of her voice in his earpiece. Keep moving. A shot cracked overhead. The tracer arced across the valley, striking one of the pursuing operators dead center. Then another. And another. Each one clean. Each one saving them another 10 seconds of life. His chest tightened, not from fear this time, but something harder to name. Respect, maybe guilt. He didn't know which one weighed more. By the time they reached the far bank, dawn had fully broken. Light spilled across the forest in silver shards, cutting through mist like broken glass. They collapsed behind a fallen log, gasping. Vega laughed once, breathless. If she's not human, I'm okay with it. Sat up, wiped mud from his eyes. She's human, he said quietly. That's what makes it work. He looked across the river. No movement, no sound. Just the echo of shots fatting into the trees. He keyed the mic one last time. Sniper, we're clear. Where are you? Static. He waited. Then her voice, so faint it almost didn't sound real. Finishing something I should have finished years ago. Frowned, talk to me. What are you doing? Closing the loop. And then silence. Back on the ridge, crawled into position above Mason Hale's team. They were moving slower now, careful, methodical, too confident. Through the scope, she found his face again. The same calm eyes, the same half-smile he used to wear when he lectured her about control. She whispered his name. He froze like he'd heard it through the wind. Then he looked straight toward her. Their eyes met across 700 meters of air and history. For a heartbeat there was no sound, no war, no mission. Just recognition. He raised his rifle. She didn't flinch. 2 souls who had taught each other everything except how to let go. She whispered, you shouldn't have come back. He smiled faintly, neither should you. And the world went silent again, right before both of them fired. The first shot missed by half an inch. The second didn't. The round tore through bark inches above her head, showering her with splinters. The air filled with the sharp hiss of supersonic metal and the heavy scent of pine sap. Rolled sideways, low, fast, instinct overriding pain. Her shoulder screamed where the old wound reopened, but she kept moving, sliding behind a boulder slick with rain. Return fire, controlled single shot. Her round hit the trunk Mason Hale was using for cover. Bark exploded, echo chasing itself down the valley. Then silence again. Always silence. She wiped the mud from her cheek and pressed her body against the rock, heartbeat sinking with the pulse in her trigger finger. Every breath had weight. Every second stretched thin between memory and instinct. She listened. Nothing but wind. Then his voice, calm, too calm, drifted through the static of her earpiece. You always did shoot high when you were angry. Her stomach clenched, and you always talked too much. I had to, you never listened. Adjusted her scope, scanning for movement. Why are you here, Hale? You're supposed to be dead. Dead is useful, he said. Keeps people from asking questions. So you switch sides. He laughed softly. There are no sides left, just contracts and ghosts. She closed her eyes for a second, the sound of his voice dragging her backward 3 years. Afghanistan. The dust, the heat, the mission that wasn't supposed to exist. She remembered the smell of diesel and dry blood, the cracked walls of that wasn't safe. Hale standing in the doorway, rifle slung, eyes hollow. They had orders to hold the village until. But command changed the objective mid-mission. Strike the convoy, eliminate the cargo, no witnesses. The cargo had been civilians. She'd watched him argue with command over the sat feed, watched his jaw tighten as the orders came through again. He had lowered his weapon, told her quietly, "We follow orders, Reeves. That's what we do." She disobeyed. Dragged 2 survivors out of the kill zone under fire. And when the dust cleared, she turned to him for help. But he'd already radioed it in. They called her insubordinate, removed her from active status. He vanished soon after, officially KIA, unofficially erased. Now here he was, 3 years later, standing in the same rain that felt like penance. She keyed her mic again. "How many more have to die for your clean slate?" He sighed. "You still don't understand. This isn't about me." "Then what?" "Control, the same reason they trained you, the same reason they built us, to do things they can't admit exist." "Funny," she said. "Sounds like justification for betrayal." "Maybe it is." A crack of thunder rolled across the ridge. For a second, both of them went still, listening to the storm move over the valley. Then she saw the flicker, a reflection off his scope, 2 degrees left. He'd changed position. Smart. She exhaled, shifted aim, let the barrel settle. Her finger tightened. But when she looked through the glass, she didn't see the enemy. She saw the man who taught her to steady her breath. The man who told her patience was the weapon that never jammed. And suddenly the forest felt smaller. The distance between them, 700 meters, shrank to the size of memory. She lowered the rifle. "Hale," she said softly, "you don't have to do this." "You think this ends if I stop?" His voice cracked for the first time. "They'll just send someone else." "Then let them." "No," a pause. "If one of us dies, maybe they'll think it's finished. That's the only peace left to give." Her throat tightened. "Peace isn't found in killing." "Maybe not," he said, "but it's how we were built to look for it." Then he fired. The round hit her cover, inches from her leg. Reflex overrode mercy. She returned fire once, twice. Silence again. Then she saw it, a faint red mist drifting through fog. A shape collapsing. She froze. "No," she whispered. "No, no." She broke from cover, sliding downhill through mud and rock, ignoring the pain in her shoulder. When she reached him, he was still breathing, barely. The bullet had caught him just under the ribs, clean exit, fast bleed. His rifle lay half buried in the dirt, rain pooling around it. He looked up at her, eyes glassy but lucid. "You never miss," he said weakly. "Didn't want to prove it this time." She knelt beside him, pressing her hand against the wound. "Stay still, you'll make it." He smiled faintly. "That's optimism, I like it." "Shut up," she whispered. His breathing stuttered. "You were right to save them, you know, back then." "Froze what?" "I told command they were hostile. I knew they were. I just wanted the mission to mean something." Her jaw clenched. "You could stopped it." "I did, too late." He coughed, a trace of blood at his lips. "We don't get to choose what follows us, Reeves, only how long we keep running from it." Her hand trembled against his chest. "You think this fixes anything?" she asked. He smiled again, eyes unfocused. "Maybe it lets you sleep." And then he went still. No sound, no struggle. Just quiet. The kind that feels like the world holding its breath before deciding whether to forgive. She sat there for a long time, the rain softening around them. Her fingers pressed into the mud, into the weight of what was left. There was no triumph, no relief, only the strange calm that comes when you realize the story that ruined you has finally ended and you're still standing. She closed his eyes and whispered something he once told her. A clean shot isn't about taking life. It's about ending what's already dying. Then she picked up his rifle, wiped the cereal clean, and stood. Far below, his team moved along the river. They'd found partial comms, enough to reach an operations relay in Montana airspace. Spoke into the mic. "This is Echo 4. We've cleared engagement zone. Request immediate extraction." A new voice responded, flat, unfamiliar. "Copy Echo 4. Coordinates confirmed. Extraction inbound, ETA 40 minutes. Confirm status for all teams," said. "Negative. You're the only active team remaining in AO." Exchanged a look with Vega. "That's not possible. We had secondary elements East Ridge." "Those units are off comms. Proceed to extraction." Static swallowed the rest. Vega muttered, "Guess we're ghosts now too." His jaw tightened. Maybe that's the point. He looked back toward the ridge where the sniper had gone silent. The fog still hung thick, unmoving. Something in his gut told him she wasn't dead. People like her didn't vanish. They just changed shape. "Pack it up," he ordered. "We move." On the ridge, moved through the trees with the steady rhythm of habit. She wrapped her shoulder tight, taken Hale's sidearm and left his body under the tree line. Not hidden, not displayed, just there. A marker for whatever truth would find it later. Every step hurt, but pain meant time was still running forward. She reached the edge of a clearing and stopped. Her comm hissed once, then a voice broke through. "Sniper, this is Echo 4. If you're alive, we're pulling out." She hesitated, then keyed the mic. "Copy, stay low until the bird lands. You'll have company inbound." "Command." "Something worse." "What about you?" asked. "Not my extraction." "Dead?" She cut transmission. Her eyes drifted toward the east, where the first pale light touched the treetops. For the first time in years, she let herself feel something close to relief. But it was brief. Down in the valley, engines rumbled, heavy, mechanical, not from the extraction bird. Trucks. Dozens. The militia. Hale's death hadn't stopped them, it had unleashed them. They were coming for her. She crouched low, watching through the scope as headlights cut through the fog. Men dismounted, weapons drawn, moving with purpose. This wasn't chaos anymore, it was vengeance. And she was the reason for it. She checked her magazine, half full, a single frag, no backup. She exhaled. So be it. Sometimes survival wasn't the point. Sometimes it was the statement that followed. She adjusted the rifle, set the bipod, and whispered to herself, "Let's finish it." The first truck rounded the bend. She took the driver first, windshield crack, headlight burst, chaos erupting. The second truck tried to turn. She disabled the tire. It spun out, crashed into a tree. The men scattered, shouting in languages she half recognized. Her world narrowed to targets, breath, distance. 1, 2, 3. The rifle moved like a heartbeat, steady and mechanical. Then a round caught the rock beside her, throwing stone dust into her eyes. She blinked hard, wiped blood and grit from her face. They were triangulating her now, closing in. She switched positions, moved uphill, changed angles. Each movement precise, learned from years of surviving her own mistakes. Her pulse was steady, her mind quiet. And in that stillness came a memory, not of war, but of her mother's voice in the wilderness. Patience is power, but mercy is what makes you human. For the first time, she didn't know which one to choose. She waited for the next silhouette to appear, young, thin, terrified, barely more than a boy. Her finger touched the trigger, then stopped. He hesitated too, eyes wide, gun shaking. She saw herself in him, the same confusion, the same false purpose. She lowered the rifle. The boy didn't shoot, he turned and ran. Let out a long, trembling breath. Not victory, just a choice. She picked up her rifle and walked toward the ridge, away from the fight. Behind her, the forest burned in short bursts of fire and sound. Ahead, the sky lightened, gray becoming gold, then white. She didn't look back. Some wars don't end when the shooting stops. They end when you stop needing to be right. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. The rotor wash flattened the grass into circles. Dawn had burned through the fog, leaving the sky pale and empty above the valley. Watched the helicopter descend, its shadow flickering across the river like a ghost unsure where to land. The team formed a loose perimeter, weapons low, eyes higher. Nobody said a word. When the bird touched down, two figures in dark flight suits stepped out. Neither wore insignia. One carried a clipboard, the other a tablet already glowing with the coordinates of somewhere they hadn't been yet. "Lieutenant." He nodded. "Orders from operations. You and your team are to return to Fort Benton for debrief." Studied the man's eyes. No recognition, no warmth, just a job. "What about the other unit in the field?" The man didn't blink. No other unit registered in this sector. Hale muttered bullshit. Didn't argue. He just motioned for the team to load up. As the helicopter lifted off, the valley shrank beneath them, a smear of green and ash and fog. Looked once toward the ridge where she'd been. Nothing moved. He told himself she was gone, but a part of him didn't believe it. The debrief room smelled of old coffee and static. Concrete walls, one-way glass, two cameras that didn't bother to hide. Sat alone for 40 minutes before the door opened. Commander stepped in, a man built from polished edges and exhaustion. He didn't sit, "Tell me what happened." Kept his voice steady. "Recon mission turned ambush, 6 hostiles down. We reached extraction with 4 men intact." Set a file on the table. "And this?" He slid a photo forward. Grainy satellite still of a woman moving through trees, rifle slung, face half hidden by foliage. Said nothing. "Who is she?" "Unknown." Leaned forward. "That's not the report your men are writing." "Then maybe you should ask them." "I'm asking the one in command." His jaw tightened. "She saved us. Without her you'd be pulling body bags." "That's not what I asked." "Then ask the right questions." Stared at him for a long moment, then said quietly, "She's a liability. The kind of story that unravels careers." Almost laughed. "Who's yours?" The commander's expression didn't change. "You're tired, Lieutenant. Go get some sleep. We'll finish this tomorrow." As he stood to leave, said, "Sir, what happens to the footage?" "What footage?" And just like that, the conversation ended. Outside, the air smelled of disinfectant and jet fuel. Hale was waiting by the hangar, hands buried in his jacket pockets. "Well," he asked. "They're scrubbing it," said. "Whole op never existed." "Figures." Vega joined them, carrying 2 cups of coffee that looked like mud. "They took our gear, said it's evidence." Stared toward the airfield. "We're not evidence, we're the alibi." They drank in silence. Hundreds of miles north, under a sky the color of steel, Reeves stepped off a freight train outside. She moved like someone who'd forgotten how to belong, head low, hood up, one arm pressed against her ribs. The shoulder wound had sealed but not healed. Every motion sent a spark through her spine. The rail yard was empty except for crows and wind. She followed the fence line until the trees swallowed her again. By noon she'd reached the old ranger cabin near Glacier Creek, the same one she'd used before her name went dark. Dust on the windows, a rusted stove, a radio that still worked if you hit it hard enough. She set the rifle down on the table and stared at it for a long time. Hale's rifle. She remembered the weight of his hand guiding hers, the exact cadence he'd taught her for breath control. Now that same weapon felt foreign, like holding the ghost of a mistake. She cleaned it anyway. Disassembly, wipe, oil, reassemble. The ritual steadied her heartbeat. When the last screw clicked into place, she whispered, "Thank you for the lesson." Then she set the gun aside and turned on the radio. Static filled the room, then a distant voice cutting through. A local weather channel, nothing else. No one was looking for her. Or maybe everyone was. At Fort Benton, his team was scattered through separate quarters under medical observation. He couldn't sleep. The same dream replayed. Rain, the ridge, the crack of her rifle, then silence. He sat up before dawn, pulled on his boots, and walked out onto the tarmac. The sky was still dark, the air sharp with frost. A figure was waiting at the edge of the hangar, an older man, broad-shouldered, coat too clean for field work. "Lieutenant," the man said, "name's Weller, Office of Special Operations Liaison." Frowned. "That department doesn't exist." "Exactly." Weller lit a cigarette, smoke curling like a secret. "You had contact with a sniper operating off-record, female, unknown." "Didn't answer." Weller smiled slightly. "We've been trying to find her for a long time. She used to belong to us." "Used to." "She went private, then she went quiet. Now she's very inconvenient." "What do you want from me?" "Confirmation she's dead." Looked away. "Can't give you that." "Can't or?" He didn't respond. Weller took a slow drag. "Here's the thing, Lieutenant. If she's alive, she's holding data that could cripple 2 entire programs. That's a problem for people far above either of us. And if I tell you nothing, then you'll keep being debriefed until you forget what side you're on." He flicked the cigarette into the dark and walked away. Stood there until the wind erased the smoke. By nightfall, the team was ordered onto administrative leave. Stress recovery, they called it. Drove north, no orders, no destination, just instinct. He followed the highways until the pavement narrowed into gravel, the mountains rising on either side like walls built to hold in secrets. When he reached Glacier Creek, the truck's gas light had been on for 30 miles. He parked, killed the engine, and listened. The forest sounded alive again, owls, wind, water. And somewhere in it, maybe, a ghost with a rifle. He hiked until the moon broke through clouds and silvered the path ahead. Then he saw the cabin, light flickering through one window, faint smoke from a stove. He approached slow, hands visible. From the shadows, a voice said, "You're either brave or stupid." He smiled despite himself. "Depends who's asking." The door opened halfway. She stood there, pale from exhaustion, eyes sharp as ever. "Couldn't sleep," he said. She stepped aside. "Then you might as well come in." The inside smelled of gun oil and coffee. Maps spread across the table, her gear neatly stacked. Closed the door behind him. "You're supposed to be dead." "So are you." He sat, nodded toward the rifle. "That his?" She didn't look at it. "Was." He studied her face, the new scar along her temple. "Command's looking for you." "They've always been looking. They sent a spook named Weller." She gave a humorless smile. "Then the cleanup's begun." "You have the data." She hesitated, then reached into a drawer and pulled out a weathered flash drive. Telemetry, coordinates, mission logs, everything they buried. Exhaled. "You could end careers with that." "I could stop programs that shouldn't exist." He stared at her, unsure whether to admire or fear her. "Why tell me?" "Because you still believe in something." He shook his head. "Belief doesn't survive long in our world." "Then prove me wrong." They sat in silence, the only sound the ticking of the stove. After a while, she said quietly, "You ever wonder what happens to people like us when there's no more missions left?" "Yeah," he said, "we start making our own." She looked at the drive, then back at him. "Help me deliver it, safely, quietly." "That's treason." "No," she said, "it's truth." He thought of Weller, of the file already being rewritten somewhere. Finally he nodded. "All right, but once it's out, you disappear for good." "I've been disappearing my whole life." They left the cabin before dawn. Frost glimmered on the ground, stars fading behind the first hint of sunrise. She moved with that same ghost-like grace, even injured. Followed, pack heavier with secrets than supplies. The plan was simple. Reach a secure relay station used by local search and rescue, old tech, but hard to trace. From there, upload the data to multiple independent servers. Let sunlight do what silence never could. Halfway down the trail, stopped. Someone's here. Froze, scanning the trees. A click safety off somewhere behind them. From the dark, Weller stepped out, coat dry despite the frost. 2 operators flanked him, rifles raised. "I admire persistence," Weller said. "I really do." Lifted his hand slowly. "How'd you find us?" "You left a helicopter manifest open on base. Next time, erase your name." He turned to, "You've made quite a mess. Give me the drive and maybe we can pretend you drowned." She met his gaze without fear. "You don't scare me." "I'm not supposed to. Consequences do." Said, "You kill us here, and someone will come looking." Weller smiled. "No one looks for ghosts." The forest was silent again. That terrible silence that always came before someone pulled a trigger. Then from somewhere beyond the trees, a sound, low, growing, mechanical. Rotor blades. Everyone turned. A helicopter rising over the ridge, civilian orange markings, search and rescue colors. Whispered, "Not them." The operators hesitated. Weller's eyes narrowed. Seized the moment, grabbed arm and dove behind a log as gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes lit the trees. Bark and dirt exploded around them. Fired back once, twice, covering her movement. She rolled to a new angle, sighted through scope, and dropped one operator clean. The other panicked, sprayed blind. She fired again, silence. Weller was gone. The civilian helicopter hovered overhead, confused, spotlight cutting across chaos. Shouted, "Go, move." They ran, ducking through the undergrowth until the sound of the rotors drowned everything else. When they finally stopped, miles away, both were gasping. Looked back toward the smoke rising through the trees. "He'll try again." Nodded, "Then we stay ahead of him." She handed him the drive. "If I don't make it." "Don't start that. Burn it before they do." He pocketed it carefully. "You'll make it." She gave him a tired smile. "That's optimism, I like it." For a moment neither spoke. The forest was waking around them, birds, water, wind. Life resuming like none of it had happened. He said softly, "You ever miss being a soldier?" She looked at the rising sun. "Every day I don't." The relay tower rose from the trees like a rusted spine. 30 feet of steel lattice, half-buried cables snaking into a shack the size of a closet. Stopped at the tree line and listened. Wind in the wires, a distant crow, nothing else. She nodded once, clear. Followed, boots sinking into thawing ground. The morning sun was thin but real. After nights of fog and gunfire, it felt almost indecent. Inside, the shack smelled of dust and metal. Old SAR posters curled on the walls, missing hikers, avalanche safety tips, numbers no one had called in years. Crouched beside the transmitter, "Think it still works?" "It will." She knelt, unzipped her pack, and pulled out the battered flash drive. He watched her slide it into the ancient laptop. The screen flickered, then woke with a cough of light. "Signal's weak," she murmured, "but enough to piggyback off the emergency net. Once it's live, it mirrors to every civilian relay on this grid. They can't erase it all." Leaned against the doorframe, rifle ready. "How long?" 7 minutes. 7 minutes felt like a lifetime. He stared through the cracked window at the tree line, half expecting Weller to step out of the light again, half hoping he wouldn't. Typed fast, knuckles split and raw. The data folders opened, time-stamped footage, comm logs, heat signature overlays. He saw one clip by accident, the drone feed from that mission gone wrong. Civilians running. the explosion blooming like a flower made of light. He turned away. God. She didn't look up. Now you understand why they'd rather kill us than explain it. His throat burned. We could still hand it to internal affairs, chain of command. They are the chain, she said quietly. We send it public or it dies. He didn't argue. There wasn't time. The progress bar crawled, 42%. A gust rattled the door. Both turned. Nothing. Just wind. Then faint at first, a low hum. Rotors. Cursed, he found us. Unplugged the laptop, grabbed the drive. It's halfway uploaded. Half isn't enough. She slid the drive into his vest pocket. Then you finish it. Where are you going? Buying you the other half. He grabbed her wrist. You won't survive another fight. Her eyes met his, steady, clear, already gone somewhere he couldn't follow. Neither will the truth if someone doesn't stall him. She slipped free, snatched Hale's rifle and stepped into the sunlight. The helicopter appeared over the ridge, black paint glinting like oil. Two figures leaned out the doors, operators scanning. Moved into the open, low and fast, ducking behind stumps as the first bursts tore into the dirt around her. She fired once. Rotor wash kicked the shot wide, but the sound was enough to draw them lower. Exactly what she needed. The rotor downdraft slammed against her chest, hot air and grit. The wind never stopped up there. It moved through the burned trees like a whisper that refused to die, carrying the smell of rain and smoke and endings. Stood on the ridge long after the helicopter lights disappeared. His ears still rang from the gunfire. His hands still shook from holding the flash drive like it weighed 1,000 lives. He'd buried beneath a cairn of shale and pine branches at first light. Not a soldier's grave, just a quiet one. The stone pile looked too small for what she'd carried. He wanted to say something, couldn't. Words had become a language for people who still believed in answers. When he finally turned from the ridge, dawn had gone gray again, as if the sky couldn't decide whether the day deserved to start. By the time he reached the highway, the truck's gas tank was nearly empty. He didn't care where the road led. Every sign looked the same: detour, closure, silence. He drove until the world flattened into farmland, until the radio found a signal strong enough to break the quiet. A news voice, calm and distant. Unconfirmed reports of a data leak from a classified joint task operation. Sources deny authenticity. Smiled without humor. She'd done it. He pulled onto the shoulder, killed the engine, and sat there listening to the wind rattle the truck. The drive was gone. He'd mailed it to an address she'd given him weeks earlier, one that traced back to no one and nothing. Her contingency, her last move. Now it was out there. Truth, weightless and irreversible. He watched the horizon until his vision blurred. 2 weeks later, he sat in a windowless office in D.C. No name on the door, no rank on the man sitting across from him. Weller. You did well, Weller said. His tone was almost kind. You survived. Stared at the empty chair beside him. She didn't. Weller poured 2 fingers of whiskey into a glass and slid it across the table. You think that matters? It should. You're still thinking like a soldier. You want moral equations, input-output justice. There isn't any. Didn't touch the drink. Then why am I here? Because you're useful. Because people trust your version of events. Because if we call this a success, no one looks at what really happened. And what do you call what really happened? Weller smiled. Necessary. Stood, you can bury her name, but you can't bury what she did. Weller leaned back, unbothered. You'd be surprised. He left without another word. Outside, the city felt too clean, too bright. The air smelled of rain on hot concrete, and every siren sounded like memory. He walked until the buildings thinned, until the noise faded into the hum of traffic. Then he stopped at a. The headline was small, buried near the bottom. Independent SOURCES release footage of unauthorized strike. Pentagon INVESTIGATS. He folded the paper once, slipped it into his jacket and kept walking. Up north in a cabin that hadn't burned after all, Reeves breathed again. She crawled half a mile from the relay before the blast took it. The wound along her ribs had reopened. She'd passed out twice in the snow before she found cover. By the time she woke, the world believed she was dead. And that was fine. She built her new life around quiet. New ID, new routine, same ghosts. Mornings spent chopping wood, afternoons listening to the wind, nights where the stars looked close enough to touch. But sometimes, when the wind shifted just right, she could still hear the rotor wash, the sharp echo of gunfire, his voice shouting her name through the storm. She told herself it was only memory. Winter broke early. She was skinning a fish by the creek when the first snow melted off the branches. A single raven perched above her, black against white sky. The world felt too still. Then a sound behind her, footsteps. She turned slow, knife ready. Stood there, older, thinner, the same look in his eyes that soldiers wear when they've run out of wars. "Took you long enough," she said. "Had to make sure no one followed." He dropped his pack beside the fire pit, sat on a log, and looked at her like he was counting the pieces of proof that she was real. "I saw the leak," he said finally. "Half the world's pretending it never happened." She smiled faintly, "Half's better than none." "You could called. You would try to fix it." He laughed once dry, "Probably." They sat in silence. The river hissed, the raven called once and flew away. After a while he said, "What now?" "Now nothing," she said. "Let the noise eat itself." "You don't believe that." "I have to." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded newspaper. "Front page next week. They're reopening the case. Nomming names." She didn't touch it. "That's not justice, that's politics. Sometimes they look the same from far away." He studied her face, the scar on her shoulder. "You really thought you'd stay dead." "Hope's cheaper than hiding," she said. He smiled at that. "You always were better with the last word." She poked the fire with a stick, sparks rising into the dark. "You stayed clean." "As clean as anyone can. They gave me a desk, think it's punishment." "It is." He laughed softly. "Yeah." Later, when the sky went black and full of stars, he found her outside the cabin, staring at the ridge line. "Can't sleep." "Never could," she said. They stood there in the cold, listening to the forest breathe. Said quietly, "I keep seeing him." "Hale." "Yeah." She nodded. "He taught us both too well." "You think he wanted it to end this way?" "I think he just wanted it to end." He looked at her, the way her eyes caught the firelight without softening. "What about you?" "I wanted to stop proving I deserved to be here." "And?" "Still working on it." The wind shifted again, carrying the smell of snow and pine. Said you could come back, teach, train, they'd listen now. She smiled, small and sad. "They only listen after you stop talking." He wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Instead he said, "You saved us." She looked toward the mountains. "I saved what I could." At dawn, he woke to find her gone. Only footprints in fresh frost, leading toward the ridge. On the table, the newspaper lay open, headlines circled in pencil. Beneath it, a note in her handwriting. "Don't wait for orders, they never come." He folded the note into his pocket and stepped outside. The sun was rising, slow and red through the fog. He followed her tracks until they disappeared into the tree line, then stopped. Some ghosts deserve to stay free. He turned back toward the cabin. The wind rose again, whispering through the pines, carrying her name in a way that sounded like forgiveness. Weeks later, a reporter published a story too clean to be fiction. Satellite logs, transcripts, proof of a strike gone wrong. No one named her, no one could. But those who had been there recognized the silence between the lines. Somewhere in a cabin hidden by trees and snow, Reeves listened to the world argue about truth. Then she turned off the radio and went outside. The air smelled of thaw and new grass. In the distance, wolves howled. She smiled, not victory, not peace, something quieter. Freedom, maybe. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "People learn by watching." And then she started walking, away from the cabin, away from the noise, toward the ridge where morning light broke through clouds like a promise. Because survival wasn't her legacy. Clarity was. The snow returned before spring had the courage to stay. Thin flakes first, then thicker, soft, drifting, patient. They covered the ridge where her footprints had once led away and erased the map of everything that had happened here. Came back one last time. Not for orders, not for closure. Just to see if the forest still remembered. The cabin looked smaller than he remembered. The door leaned inward, half open, snow gathered on the floorboards. He stepped inside. The air smelled of wood smoke and oil, faint and familiar. On the table lay a single spent casing, polished clean, set upright like a candle. Beside it, a slip of paper folded into quarters. You were right, silence isn't peace. He closed his hand around the note, feeling the edges dig into his skin. Outside, wind swept down from the ridge, carrying the echo of ravens. He whispered, "I know." 3 months passed before the world caught up. The inquiry closed without answers. The news cycle moved on. The leak became a headline, then a rumor, then a conspiracy debated in bars by people who had never smelled gunpowder or rain-soaked pine. But somewhere, buried in the fine print of a hearing transcript, was a single sentence that survived editing. Certain field assets acted with exceptional judgment under compromised command authority. No names. No recognition. Just truth disguised as bureaucracy. That was enough. Left the service quietly, no ceremony, no speech. He drove west until the ocean stopped him. The water looked the way the forest had looked that night, gray, endless, waiting to forgive something it couldn't understand. He rented a small house near the cliffs, the kind of place where people came to forget who they used to be. Most mornings he ran until his lungs hurt. Most evenings he sat on the porch and listened to waves hitting rock, the rhythm so steady it almost sounded like breathing. Sometimes he imagined another porch somewhere north, a woman sharpening a knife by lantern light, the same rhythm guiding her hand. He never tried to find her. Some debts were better paid in faith. Winter again. The ocean stormed for days, wind howling against the windows, power lines humming like distant artillery. On the third night, a letter arrived. No return address, no stamp, just his name written in block letters and sealed in tape. Inside was a photo, grainy infrared, taken from a satellite feed. A woman crossing a high ridge alone, rifle slung, wind tearing at her coat. On the back, 3 words in pencil. Still watching, N. He sat there a long time, the photo trembling between his fingers. He didn't smile, didn't cry. He just exhaled, a sound somewhere between relief and grief. Then he folded the picture once and placed it inside his field journal. The storm outside eased, the way storms always do when they've said what they needed to say. Hundreds of miles away, Reeves crossed that same ridge under a sky sharp with stars. She carried little now, just a pack, a rifle, a map she barely used. Below her, the valley shimmered with ice. Above, the aurora moved like slow fire, silent and alive. Each step sounded like memory breaking. She stopped at the crest, looked back at the darkness she'd come from, and for a moment she saw them all again. Hale on the ridge in the rain, the faceless men who tried to rewrite what happened here. The ghosts didn't accuse anymore. They just walked beside her, quieter now. She spoke into the cold air, voice barely louder than breath. We did what we could. The wind carried it somewhere below, to trees and rivers that would never tell. When the first light touched the valley, she took a small metal tag from her pocket, the old Marine ID, edges worn smooth, and pressed it into the snow. Then she placed a single bullet casing beside it, and covered both with her bare hand until they vanished beneath frost. No graves, no monuments, just memory left where it belonged. She stood, shouldered her rifle, and turned toward the east. Behind her, the ridge fell silent again. In the city, months later, someone left an anonymous envelope at the entrance to a newsroom. Inside were coordinates, a flash drive, and a line typed in plain text. If truth dies in daylight, plant it where the shadows can't reach. The journalist who opened it never found the sender, but the data matched a pattern from the earlier leak. Same encryption, same precision, same refusal to hide behind names. The story ran for 3 days before being buried under politics, but those who read it remembered. And somewhere, in a world that rarely stopped to listen, a few people learned something they hadn't known the day before. That was enough. Visited Arlington once, a year later. He wasn't sure why. He didn't know any of the names etched in the stone he stood before, but he saluted anyway. He whispered, "For all of us who stayed too long." As he turned to leave, a young recruit passing by stopped him. "Sir, were you in Echo 4? Paused once. The recruit hesitated, then said, "My co told me about a woman sniper who saved a team out in the woods. Said she disappeared after. That true?" Looked at the sky, something like that. What happened to her? He thought about the photo, the note, the silence that had followed. She kept moving, he said. The recruit nodded, as if that made sense. Guess that's what we all do. Smiled faintly, if we're lucky. Night again on the northern ridge. The wind was gentle this time. The snow fell slow, weightless, beautiful. A campfire flickered in a hollow between rocks. A rifle leaned against a pack. Beside it sat writing in a small notebook by firelight. Her handwriting was careful, deliberate, each line a promise to remember without bitterness. She wrote about Hale and what he taught her. About and the faith he refused to lose. About herself and the quiet place between duty and peace. When she finished, she tore the page out and fed it to the fire. The flame caught, bright and brief. She watched it until it was gone. Then she whispered, "Some things don't need to be kept, just witnessed." The stars above flared brighter, as if agreeing. Far below, the world kept turning. People went to work, argued on screens, forgot how many names were missing from the stories they told. But in the high country, the wind still moved through the pines in the same old rhythm, steady, patient, eternal. If you stood there long enough, you might hear it. The faint echo of a rifle shot, the whisper of a woman's voice carried on the air. Not a ghost, not a legend, just someone who refused to let the truth stay buried. And maybe that's all the world ever needs. Not heroes, not martyrs. Just people who act when silence would be easier. The snow fell harder, blurring the horizon, folding everything back into white. The fire dimmed. The wind softened. And in the quiet that followed, the mountain exhaled. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.